I feel so free here at the ocean. Nobody can tell me what to do, who to be. I just watch the waves go in and out. But out there in the world, there are people who are being sex trafficked. And today, we are not only going to hear about the inside scoop in trafficking and what it's like, but we're going to hear about what it's like for sex workers. No, life is not easy. But growing and learning a little bit more information every day is icing on the cupcake. Welcome to the Life in Red podcast. This is a way of life that emphasizes positive sexuality, self-love, and confidence. On this journey, red is now your new color. Be courageous. Be passionate. Be sexy. And never stop living your best red life. So now I have one question for you. Are you ready to live your life in red? To join us on this journey, like and subscribe below. Welcome to the Life in Red podcast. This is Brittany, your host, and today, guys, I am so excited as usual, but more excited because we have an amazing group we're going to be talking about called the Cupcake Girls. And I know if you hear cupcake and you're like me, give me the treats. But we got a treat for you, and I can't wait for you to hear about this. Today, I'm about to introduce you to our amazing guest, Amy Marie Merrill. She is the co-executive director of the Cupcake Girls organization. And just to guys, to give you a little inside scoop, so you keep sitting here watching, we're going to be talking about sex trafficking, sex workers. We're going to be talking about a little bit of politics, what's going on in the media with sex workers and sex trafficking. If sex workers aren't your thing, still listen in, because sex trafficking is. You got kids, you got female daughters, and they are into sex. You don't want to miss this episode. Stay tuned. Welcome, Amy. Thank you for being on with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and connect with you more. You're such a joy, and I'm excited to start my day with you.
I'm excited to start my day with you. I mean, this is great. I loved meeting you originally. I love your energy, and I was really shocked to hear. I heard about Cupcake Girls, but I didn't know what it was about. And it is something, when I talk to you guys, when you hear passion in someone's voice, you know they believe in it. It's not just about money. That's a rare thing. Amy's passionate about Cupcake Girls. Can you tell the viewers what you guys are about?
Yeah, so Cupcake Girls are here because we want to eradicate sex trafficking and make sure that sex workers are safe and empowered. And how we do that is by ensuring that everyone has access to the resources that they need. A lot of us, we take for granted the fact that we can go to the dentist office and the doctor's office and the pediatrician without fear of being raped. And it just sounds so intense, but it's a truth. It's a reality for a lot of us. And so what Cupcake Girls does is we vet doctors, dentists, lawyers, daycare providers, auto mechanics, you name it, we're vetting them. And we make sure that they are safe for our participants to use. And then we turn around and we ask those people that we're vetting to give us a discounted or pro bono rate to their services. And so we have dentists that will see our participants absolutely for free. We had somebody who was able to get root canals done absolutely for free the other week. We have people that are able to go to the gynecological exam and get that totally for free. We have people that are able to get work done on their car and the only thing that they're paying for is parts. And the reason that we do this is because we really believe that it's wrong that sex work is criminalized and that it's actually harming people, and it's making it even harder for people that are wanting to, if they are wanting to leave a trafficking situation, it makes it harder for them to do that because of the criminalization of sex work. And so we speak out a lot about the importance of decriminalizing sex work, the importance of really looking at stigma and looking at discrimination and why we do the things that we do, and how we can be better as a society. And so I'm really proud of the work that we do. I've been doing this now since 2012 and with the Cupcake Girls, and I really consider this to be the most important work as a feminist that I could be doing.
Well, there's so much there. My mind is like, okay, I got to ask about this. That is beautiful. Like, and I could tell you truly believe in this. Now, I'm going to go to the most generic, superficial question that popped in my head first. Why the name Cupcake Girls?
Yeah. So when Cupcake Girls first got started, there was a group of folks that would go into strip clubs and brothels in Nevada, because we were actually started out of Las Vegas, Nevada. And they would bring in hairstyling tools and makeup stuff, and they would do hair and makeup for people before they went on set. And then while they were doing their hair and makeup, they would talk to them about the resources that we had and the resources that were available to them. And then when people would see us come in, because we brought pink cupcakes with us every time we went to the clubs, people would yell out, "The Cupcake Girls are here." And so that's how we got our name.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. They're like, you're the Cupcake Girls. So going into, because I'm going to represent in this interview, not just like, I want people to have an open mind. That's what this interview is about, is like hearing another side to things without just turning this off. Yeah. I want to ask the questions that the objective audience that has one eye open, as I say on the show, would have. And I love your passion, because you're going to give your truth and your honesty. And I want to get some of those questions out. Now, sex trafficking, I don't think a lot of people, believe it or not, would attribute. And if they do, they would just assume, okay, you're a sex worker. Well, you're going to get sex trafficked. This would be the cold, hard truth perspective. But for me, I know I never put the two and two together. There's sex trafficking. Is it rather normal for someone who is in the sex working industry to be in sex trafficking?
So that's a really interesting question. And I want to start by saying, sex work itself is not inherently harmful. It's the way that our society treats sex work and sex workers that makes it harmful, that makes it dangerous.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so I think it's important to start off with that. I know that there are a lot of people in sex work that have been in what we call bad situations, where they've had an unsafe manager, where they've been working in really precarious situations because they did what they had to do in order to make the money that they needed to make for themselves and their families. And since FOSTA-SESTA passed, where they were putting extreme laws in the United States together, where they were saying that, you couldn't background check your client before you saw them. There was no way to look into making sure that they were a safe person. Sex work got even more dangerous and even more scary. And we saw even more people that were harmed. And so the question, it's an interesting one for me, because I do see a lot of folks that have been or are currently in sex work that have experienced some sort of exploitation, some sort of like forced coercion, things like that. And it's not because of what the work is, and it's not supposed to be a side of like, okay, well, this is what's going to happen to you if you're working in sex work. It's not supposed to be like that. it's because of the way that we as a society are treating these people. There's not an easy way for folks to go to the police and say, like, hey, I was assaulted and I need support. Or,
so they hear they're sex workers,
right?
And the police, I'm assuming, would, sorry, shouldn't be doing that, and that they're not getting their laws and their protection that they deserve.
Right. And because sex work is illegal in the United States, what ends up happening is they're essentially talking about crime to cops, right? Which, like, you're not supposed to do. You don't talk about crime to cops.
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. So, like, if you're a sex worker and you're saying, like, hey, I was working and this happened to me, like, it's harder and harder to get justice for that because of the way that our society looks at sex work and sex workers. So we're creating a really dangerous situation for sex workers. And having a manager, having somebody who is helping you get clients, that's not an inherently bad situation or an inherently bad person. But because of the way that we as a society treat sex work and sex workers, it's easy for people in positions of power over sex workers to force them, coerce them, manipulate them into doing things that they don't want to do. And so, do I see it in every single sex work situation? No. But I see it more often than I would like to. And it is something that I do see pretty frequently. And I don't think, again, I'm trying to make sure that it's very, very clear. This is not supposed to be just a side effect of sex work. It's literally because of the way that we as a society are treating sex workers that makes it very dangerous for them.
And I want to dive into that actually really quick, because a lot of people, I can feel like a collective resistance as I'm hearing you say that. I'm gonna kind of speak to that. All right, so let's bring up decriminalizing. I want to relate to this. So, because you're saying because of the criminalization of sex workers, it is causing danger for them for just doing a job, essentially. And I want to speak to something that relates to this that has shown and proven to be the exact same thing. Let's talk about drugs. So marijuana, right? It was criminalized, and we saw a lot of crime around it, sneaking it across the borders, people getting killed, innocent victims because of drug trafficking. And as soon as our states started saying, okay, this is a holistic thing that could help people, let's start legalizing it, it automatically, from my understanding and what the stats are showing, has brought down crime around the thing.
Right.
And I know it's different than sex work, but I wanted to prove a point that it's very similar. When we criminalize something, we make it bad, we have this stigma around something that's a job that people are doing. And it's not like they're forcing, like a sex worker's forcing his or herself on someone else. They're meeting a need and they're getting paid for it.
Right.
And because it's illegal, just like drugs were illegal, there's a lot of crime and a lot of negativity around it.
Right. Well, and it's interesting too. One of my friends tells this story, and I think it really hits the nail on the head for where we're at in our society. But she had been a sex worker in New Zealand, she had been a sex worker in the United States and then moved to New Zealand, where sex work is decriminalized. And she had experienced, force, fraud, coercion in sex work in the United States. But then when things would happen, she really didn't have any sort of recourse or any understanding of okay, I can do this, and this is going to make me safe. I'll be able to go to the police because this happened to me. Well, she was assaulted while doing sex work in New Zealand. And she was like, you know what, it's decriminalized here. I'm gonna try and go to the police and tell them what happened to me. And so she did. She went to the police, and they got her a blanket, and they got her some tea, and they talked to her about everything that happened. And they said, we're gonna get this guy. Like, this isn't okay. And she said, I was so nervous to bring this to you, and I didn't know how it was going to be received, and I'm just so moved by this. Like, thank you so much for supporting me. And the police looked at her like confused, and they're like, well, of course, like, you were assaulted. Of
Yeah,
course
there's
we're going
still
to help you.
consent. There was a
Right.
lack of consent. In sex
Right.
work, there is consent. There's a yes
Right.
to my yes.
Right.
There and good for, I mean, I'm so glad she's in a safe place now.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
great, yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, when we make sure that things are not criminalized, what it does is it opens up a lot of safety for people that don't feel safe right now coming forward and saying, like, hey, this is happening to me. And something else that's important to note is that most of the time when people are being sex trafficked, the pimps will actually use the law against the person that they're trafficking. So they'll say, well, who's going to believe you? They're just going to see that you were arrested for sex work and I have a clean record, so nobody's going to believe you. Or they'll say things like, well, if you don't do what I say, I'm just going to turn you into the police. And so there's this fear that's being brought into the person who is a victim, truly a victim in the situation, that they're scared to go to the police because they're scared of what could happen. If the police are involved. And the pimps use that. They use that against them, and they use that as a way to control them and have power over them. And that's what we've opened ourselves up to as a society, is harming people, even with like our own law enforcement. And to be like completely like transparent, I think that something that's interesting is I've talked to a lot of officers and people in law enforcement, and a lot of them are really frustrated with the fact that it's criminalized because they know that sex workers can help them get people out of trafficking. They know that. As an anti-trafficking organization, we know that. The majority of people that are coming to the Cupcake Girls, they're being referred to us by other sex workers because sex workers are on the ground. They're the first people to notice when something's going on. The other thing that happens is we make it scarier for clients of sex workers to report when they think that somebody's being trafficked. And you'll hear stories all the time in this work of people that are saying a client snuck them in money or a phone or things like that, when the client realized that the worker was being trafficked and they were trying to support them and trying to help them and trying to get them out of that situation. But they were scared to go to the police because what they were participating in, right, is illegal.
It's illegal.
And so because of the legalities, we're actually creating a system where people are scared to get justice.
Yeah, and I mean, all that is very obvious that there's an issue here. And if we go into the morality of things,
right?
Like let's go into morality a little bit, which is all opinion based on people's beliefs. But the United States has decided that this is wrong. Okay, so based on the law, that sex work is not okay. Why? And this has come from a neutral place. I'm with you. But why? Could you speak for the sex workers and in opposition to this moral belief of why it's okay? On the other side of the coin, like, why do they do it? Why are they in this? Why should it be? Besides, we know why it should be legalized now, but why are they doing the sex work?
Yeah, I mean, people do jobs for any sorts of reasons, right? Sometimes you like your job, sometimes you love your job, sometimes you're doing your job just because you're needing to get some bills paid, so you're working an extra job so that you can pay down debt or something like that. Sometimes when you're working your job, you're doing it because it is the easiest way for you to make the money that you need to make to take care of your family. I know a lot of single parents that are sex workers, and they are able to get a sitter for their kids and work as a sex worker, and then they're able to hang out with their kids and like volunteer in their classrooms and do all of these things that they wouldn't be able to do if they were working another job. So there's multiple reasons that people engage in this work and multiple reasons that people engage in any work. But something that I always try to point out is that every single job is exploitive under capitalism. I mean, we all need to work a job to make money so that we can survive. All of us do. And I don't see a lot of people getting really upset about the fact that we're underpaying our farm workers, or that we're underpaying our blue collar workers. But for some reason, they get really, really heated about sex work. And I think it's really, really because people in the United States, they just have a hard time. Well, people in general, they have a hard time with sex. People just have a hard time understanding sex. And they really see it as this thing that needs to be kept in this specific box and treated a specific way, or else it's like inherently wrong and inherently bad.
Yeah.
And the more that we keep our noses out of each other's business and really make sure that we're just supporting one another and making sure that everybody has access to the things that they might need to survive, I think we'd find that a lot of people might be happier in their own lives, because they're not judging everybody all the time and really able to take stock of the reasons why they're so intent on judging their neighbors or their friends or community members, whatever it is. But then also it would loosen us up as a society to understand, okay, well, like, a lot of people don't want to be in sex work. Like, a lot of people that are doing the work, they don't want to do it. But they're doing it because they've been doing it, and it's the way that they can provide for themselves and their families. And we're not giving them an easy way out of the work once they're in it. I've talked to people that, are porn stars, and they're like, gosh, I don't want to do this anymore, but I'm so well known at this point, and there would just be a lot of stigma and discrimination if I tried to get it.
It's hard to get a job.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing with sex work. And we see it with stay-at-home moms all the time. When you haven't had something on your resume and then you go into the workforce, it's really, really hard to get a job, right? And like a square 9-to-5 job. It's the same thing with sex work. And it's really hard to say, like, oh, well, I was, working as a sex worker for the last 9 years, and now please, hire me in this law office or something like that, because of the stigma that we put on this job.
Yeah, they objectify you. It's illegal. You've been doing an illegal act for 9 years. It's a large hole in your resume. Yeah.
Right.
And so like it's interesting because I've even had on my show and myself had worries because of the show I host. Yeah. It's a legit concern. Anything to do with sex. Doctors who speak out, teachers, professors I've had on, have gotten kicked out of universities doing thesis on sex, educational thesis, helping people understand it. It's like there's a witch hunt for sex, and I find it fascinating. And so now I know we have talked, I'm going to segue into the laws. You talked earlier about, if you could repeat it, about an act or a law that was passed that has made things kind of rough for the sex workers. Could you go into that a little bit?
Thanks for joining the Life in Red today, where we embrace passion, confidence, and positive sexuality. Keep painting your journey in bold red strokes. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us so that you never miss out on living your best red life. Ready for more? Stay passionate, stay red. See you next episode.